On Friday, Apple walked into a federal court and accused OpenAI of stealing its secrets at every level. The same Apple that pays Google $1 billion a year to think for Siri. This isn't just a lawsuit, it's an autopsy. Here's what happened. Friday morning, Northern District of California, Apple versus OpenAI. The claim, trade secret theft. And I've read the coverage, so you don't have to, because buried in this filing is the most honest thing Apple has said about AI in years. Apple didn't just sue the company. 3 defendants, OpenAI itself, 2 former Apple engineers by name, and a hardware firm called IO Products. If IO Products sounds familiar, it should. It was co-founded by Jony Ive, the man who designed the iPhone. OpenAI bought Ive's company last year. So Apple is now suing a firm built by the person who built Apple's icon. The complaint doesn't hedge either. Quote, at every level, from members of its technical staff to its chief hardware officer, OpenAI has been stealing Apple's trade secrets. That's not a company protecting one patent. That's a company describing what it believes is an organized operation. So let's look at the evidence Apple claims to have, and keep one number in your head the whole time. 400. We'll get to it. First, the 2 people Apple named. Exhibit 1. An engineer named Chang Liu. 8 years inside Apple as a senior systems electrical engineer, the kind of person who knows where everything is. He left for OpenAI this year. And according to the complaint, he never returned his Apple-issued laptop. Apple says that laptop was then used to download dozens of confidential hardware files after he'd already left the company. What kind of files? Unreleased products? Engineering presentations? Technical specifications? Vendor and supply chain details? That's the filings list, not mine. That supplier detail matters more than it sounds. Apple's supply chain is arguably its deepest moat. Those relationships took decades to build, and a systems engineer with 8 years of access doesn't just know parts. He knows why every part was chosen and what failed before it. Exhibit 2 is wilder. Tang Tan, a former Apple hardware executive, now OpenAI's hardware chief. The complaint targets how he recruited. Apple says its own secret project code names showed up in OpenAI's recruiting conversations. Code names outsiders should never know. Candidates were allegedly asked to bring Apple hardware components to job interviews, bring the parts to the interview, and departing Apple employees were allegedly coached on how to slip past Apple's own security procedures on the way out the door. The complaint even says candidates were asked about Apple's unannounced products during interviews. The interview was allegedly the extraction. OpenAI's response, in full, we have no interest in other companies' trade secrets. We remain focused on building innovative technology that empowers people everywhere. And to be fair, these are allegations. OpenAI denies them, nothing is proven, and courts exist for a reason. But the pattern Apple describes is remarkably specific. The complaint is public, and the coverage is everywhere. This is TechCrunch's write-up, scrolling through it now. Notice what Apple is really mapping out. Not one leak, but a pipeline. Recruiting, code names, hardware, suppliers. Apple is describing its own bleeding in forensic detail, and it reads less like anger and more like fear. Now here's the part that turns courtroom drama into the biggest story in tech. Because Apple's real problem isn't in that filing. Reports count more than 400 former Apple employees now working at OpenAI. Silicon designers. On-device AI specialists. The exact teams that made Apple, Apple. 400 people is not poaching. That's a migration. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can sue over files. You cannot sue people back into their old badges. Because here's what 400 people carry that no court can recover. Experience. You can subpoena a laptop. You can't subpoena what someone learned. The talent already voted with their feet. The lawsuit is about what Apple thinks left in their pockets. And while all of this was brewing, remember what Apple did in January. It signed Siri's brain away. Apple reportedly pays Google around $1 billion a year for a custom Gemini model to power the new Siri. 1.2 trillion parameters, built to order. That custom Gemini is roughly 8 times larger than Apple's own cloud models. Apple didn't outsource a feature, it outsourced the thinking. For scale, Apple's own biggest cloud models are around 150 billion parameters. The Gemini it rents is over 1 trillion. That's the whole story in 2 numbers. This isn't hypothetical either. Since iOS 26.4 this spring, Siri has already been using Gemini for context awareness. It's live in your pocket, and the full conversational Siri arrives in September with iOS 27 and the iPhone 18. Powered by Google, presented by Apple. So put this year on one timeline. January. Apple rents its AI brain from Google. July. Apple sues the company its AI talent fled to. Next week, Gemini 3.5 reportedly lands. One company lost its people and its platform edge in the same year. Its answer so far is a licensing deal and a lawsuit. So who should actually be nervous here? Grab your calculator watch because it's probably not who you think. Start with what Apple is actually afraid of. It's not the files themselves. It's the device those files might become. OpenAI plus Jony Ive plus 400 Apple hardware veterans equals the first credible attempt at a post-iPhone gadget. That's the actual war. Remember, OpenAI shipped GPT 5.6 to everyone last week, mid-lawsuit, like nothing happened. The product machine isn't slowing down for court. There's also a chess move hidden here. Discovery. Suing OpenAI means Apple's lawyers get to demand documents about OpenAI's device plans. That's my read, but think about it. Play out the outcomes. If Apple wins, damages, maybe an injunction, and the I/O device slows down, which might be the entire point. Buying time. If OpenAI wins, total validation, an embarrassed Apple, and a green light for every lab to keep hiring exactly this way. And either way, one group profits for certain: AI hardware engineers. When $2 trillion companies fight over you, your salary only goes one direction. If you build products, here's why you care. This fight decides whose platform your products live on in 5 years. Platforms are where the margins go. And the quiet winner of this whole mess? Google. It collects $1 billion a year from Apple, keeps Android, and reportedly ships Gemini 3.5 next week while its rivals fight in court. One fairness note on Apple. The cash machine still prints, the install base is 2 billion devices, and September's iPhone will sell. Don't write obituaries for the balance sheet, but lawsuits take years, and products ship in months. So watch the I/O device, and watch Gemini 3.5, not the court docket. Zoom out and there's a pattern. The AI industry now sues in the morning and ships in the afternoon. The court cases are the noise. The devices are the signal. 3 takeaways. 1. This filing is Apple describing under oath how far behind it fell. The lawsuit is the confession. 2. The AI talent war just became a legal war. Every lab is rereading its recruiting playbook before writing the next 400 offers. 3. For the first time since 2007, the next computing platform might not have an Apple logo on it. This story is moving fast and I'm tracking every twist, including Gemini 3.5 next week. Tomorrow, I'm publishing the fine print nobody read in Anthropic's $2 model, the one quietly raising your AI bill 35%. Subscribe so it doesn't raise yours.